I'm fond of pointing out that there's nothing in the Scripture that is there by accident. Every number, every detail is there by supernatural engineering. And people love to throw up to me Numbers chapter 2, because every detail is in there by design. And so I'm going to raise the question, what might be hidden behind the details that are listed in Numbers chapter 2 regarding the camp of Israel? And there's two things. First of all, there's significance behind every detail, but one step more, every detail in the Scripture points to Jesus Christ. It's not only there to be illuminating, it specifically will illuminate something about the Mashiach Nagid, the Messiah, the King of Israel. And that's exactly what it says in Psalm 47. The volume of the book is written of me. And that's even quoted in Hebrews chapter 10, verse 7, of course, applying to Jesus Christ. Now, in Numbers 2, if we went through it, you'll discover what's in Numbers 2 is a census of the able-bodied men able to go to war of each of the 12 tribes. And specifically what's excluded are the women and children and the men that are either too young or too old to serve in the army. So we're talking about men that are 20 years old and older that are capable of going to war. And when you wade through Numbers chapter 2, you discover in Judah is 74,600, in Issachar 54,400, Zebulun 57,400, and on it goes. I won't go through each of them, you get the picture. Now, what were the actual populations of these tribes? We don't know. What you need to do is make a guess of how many for each able-bodied man able to go to war, account for the rest. Because he probably has a wife and maybe a kid or two. You make a guess and multiply this number by some factor, 2.8, or pick a number statistically, whatever you're comfortable with, but that would give you a rough guess as the total population of the camp. But it's numbered here in military terms, in terms of the army. Now you say, gee, Chuck, that's really exciting. I didn't know that Manasseh was 32,200. I mean, that really is gripping stuff there, guy. Being facetious, of course, because you say, why do I need to know these numbers? Well, let's just be a little more patient. Something else that Numbers talks about, it says that these 12 tribes are to group themselves into 4 camps. Each of the 12 tribes had a tribal standard. But there were 4 of the 12 that were sort of lead tribes. And Judah is one of them. And he is instructed that Issachar and Zebulun are to camp with him. So they are to rally around, in addition to their own tribal standards, the standard of the tribe of Judah, which of course was a lion. The tribes of Simeon and Gad were to join Reuben. Then Manasseh and Benjamin were to join Ephraim. And Asher and Naphtali were to join the tribe of Dan. So we have 4 camps as symbolized by the 4 tribal standards of those 4. Now do you say, now interestingly enough, these individual numbers may not be significant, but let's just add them up. The group of Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun have a total manpower, military manpower of 186,400. Both Reuben and Ephraim, those 2 camps, Reuben and Dan, each have about 150 some odd. And Ephraim and his couple of guys have the smallest number. Okay, so we picked that up. Now what do? Well, they are instructed to camp around the Levites. In the center of the camp of Israel, the Levites were to mark out the first place. And in the middle of the camp of the Levites, they install the tabernacle. And they install the tabernacle so that its opening is toward the east. So I'm showing east at the bottom, which is the traditional ancient way of doing this. You have in the middle of that the tabernacle proper, this strange portable building that, of course, accompanied them in their wilderness wanderings. In front of that, you've got the laver, this big wash bowl thing. And then in front of that, you've got the brazen altar where they made the burnt offerings. And to the west, south, and north, you have the three families of the Levites, Gershonites, Gerarites, and Merarites. And then to the east side, on the business end of this, so to speak, you have Moses and Aaron and the priests. Not all Levites were priests, just the descendants of Aaron. So, okay, now what I don't know is how much space they needed. Whatever the space was that the Levites needed to put in the tabernacle and all their families and build around that, whatever that is, I'm going to deal as our basic unit. I don't know if that's 100 feet on the side or 100 yards on the side, or if it all was 1 acre. Don't care. Whatever it is, that's my unit. You with me so far? Okay. Now, the tribe of Judah was told to camp east of the Levites. No problem. where I've shown on the map here, as much space as the Levites needed, they could take that same width and just extend themselves eastward. No problem. The tribe of Reuben was told to camp, the camp of Reuben, I say Reuben and his 3 buddies, were supposed to camp to the south of the Levites. Now that, you need to understand, think like a rabbi. The camp of Judah was east of the Levites, the camp of Reuben south of the Levites. If they're going to be strictly obedient to the Torah, that denies them the area that's southeast. The area that's not directly east or directly south is an area that doesn't fit the instructions. Do you follow me? So only the cardinal directions are ordained in the Torah. And only the width of the camp of Levites would allow them that place. And the length then is proportional to the population. In other words, Judah would take whatever space it needs to the east, Reuben whatever it needs to the south of the Levites, and the southeastern area would be uninhabited. And so, obviously, Ephraim to the west does the same thing, and Dan to the north the same thing. And they're going to each need a little different amount of space because the populations of the 4 camps are not identical. Both Reuben and Dan are about the same size. They involve military units of about 150,000 each. The smallest group is Ephraim to the north, the largest group to Judah in the south. Now, what I want to do is I want you to join me in our imagination, and we've arranged in our imagination for a jet ranger outside, and you and I are going to pile into this jet ranger, and this jet ranger is unusually equipped because it's also a time machine. As we take off from the parking lot out there, we're going to crank in the time machine, and as this helicopter heads over to Israel, it's also going to go back in time several thousand years. And what we're going to do, we're going to approach the camp of Israel from the air, and we'll approach it as we should from the east. And as we look down, we're of course going to see the center of the whole thing, the tabernacle. And we're going to see the 4 emblems of the 4 camps. We'll have the lion to the south, the man on the left, the ox to the north, and eagle on the right. And as we look back there, and as we fly over this thing, we see the camp of Israel as it's been sketched in the book of Numbers. What do you see there? A cross. I think that's fascinating. If you follow the Torah precisely, that is the way they would have to lay out. That the north and the south arms are of roughly equal length, closely approximate. The the western group is the shortest, and the Judah camp is the longest. And if you're Balaam looking down from the mountains, counseling Balak and all of that, that's what you see. Or if you're in our imaginary helicopter flying over the camp of Israel, you see a cross. And I think that's kind of interesting. This is a sketch from the air of the camp of Israel as specified precisely in the book of Numbers, chapter 2. And I think this is an interesting idiom to find in the Torah of the Old Testament. Very, very, to me, a lot of fun.